explain a couple of the specifics about the keep left unless overtaking rule that people are often mistaken on. The first point is it applies to roads where the speed limit is above 80 kilometers an hour, not roads that are 80 or above. Many people make that mistake and think if it's an 80 zone, the keep left rule is in effect. It's not. The other one people often get wrong is they think that the keep left rule applies to all lanes except the left lane. So for example, the lane I'm currently in is the overtaking lane. It's the far right. On any multi-lane road where the keep left rule is in effect, as I move over now that I'm not overtaking, this middle lane that I'm currently in, the keep left rule does not apply to it. If you've got 3 lanes, 4, 5, doesn't matter. People often think you have to stay in the far left lane. That if you're in the middle lane not overtaking, that's also a fail of that rule or illegal. No. About overtaking on the left, or undertaking as people often say. Many people are under the impression that you can't overtake on the left, that you have to be in the right lane of any traffic you're overtaking. In Australia, that is a no. Here, you can overtake on the left or right of vehicles. So if you're on a road with 3 lanes and there's a car in the middle lane, you can overtake them on the left, overtake them in the right lane. Either way makes no difference. This goes for motorways, 2-lane suburban roads, anything at all. The rule only applies to multiple lane roads. Overtaking on a single lane road is obviously not allowed unless cars are turning or stationary, etc. That's a different rule. For this one, we're just referring to multiple lane roads where cars may be sitting in the right lane, cars may be sitting in the middle lanes, and people often think that they cannot overtake them on the left because that's undertaking and that's illegal. That is incorrect. In Australia, all lanes are allowed to be used to overtake. 2 types of merging. There is the one they refer to as a zip merge, which is where, as you can see in the diagrams and examples, the 2 lanes simply form one. The broken line in between the 2 lanes basically just disappears, and the 2 lanes then move into one. And this is what's called a zip merge. And in this case, and only in this case, the car that is ahead is the one that you must give way to. The car but traveling, so if you have a car in front of you as you're approaching the end of a zip merge and the lines disappear and the 2 lanes form one, okay, you have to give way to traffic ahead. As a side note, the only exemption with this is that car ahead can't be breaking the law in doing this. For example, you can't be 1 meter away from about to go in where the line finishes and another car comes in at doing 150 in a 60 zone and decides to try and fly past you and get his nose in front at the last second. You can't break a law to enforce another law. The other exemption of that would be is if they weren't driving within the lane properly or any other thing. They also have to be driving legally in order for them to follow the merging rules. The other type of merge is technically just a lane change, is where the 1 lane ends and instead of the 2 lanes forming one comes to an end. There will usually be arrow markers and other things saying left lane ends, merge right, for example. And in that case, the cars in that lane have to physically cross over the broken lines between the lanes. As you'll see in the examples, in this case, doesn't matter, the car that is in the lane that is ending, it doesn't matter whether they're in front, behind, next to you, the lane that is ending, the traffic in that lane always has to give way to the traffic in the lane they're going into. So in this examples, such as the one with the red car, when the traffic where they can change lanes, they can come over. If there's not and the traffic is built up, they have to slow down and wait till there's a safe gap. If necessary, come to a stop. Obviously, in a lot of cases like this, knowing the lane's ending, drivers will open a gap up and allow them to change lanes. However, in the event that the driver is trying to jump the queue and move through the traffic, or is not indicating, or is doing whatever, there is no obligation for the cars in the other lane to let them in. They don't have to give way to them. The car that is changing lanes must give way.
The next rule people are confused on is turning right at an intersection with traffic lights that doesn't have an arrow. Many people are confused on this and think that if they just have the normal green light but no arrow, that they have to wait behind the line and they can't go into the intersection. As you can see from the driver's handbook and the road rules, they encourage you to go into the intersection and prepare to make the turn as soon as it's safe to do so. This cuts the distance to the oncoming traffic and allows you to make a turn without having to wait back behind the line. Depending on the size of this intersection, may allow more cars to come into the intersection behind you and increase how many cars can turn, especially at busy times. Now, if you are in the intersection and the light turns yellow or even to red, you have not broken the law. You will not get fined. You just simply make the turn after the traffic is cleared, make the turn as safely and quickly as possible, and continue on your way, as you can see in the examples. What you don't do is wait behind the white line, as you can see in the other fail example, and as the light goes yellow to red, then proceed to go. If you're behind the white line, once the light has gone yellow, you then must stop and not proceed through. If in the event that it's unsafe for you to proceed into the intersection, if there's obstruction, if it's a curved corner, if something's blocking your view and it's safer for you to stay back behind the line to wait and take your turn, then you do that. It's not a requirement that you go into the intersection, but it is encouraged when safe to do so to do it to increase the traffic flow. And just to answer the specific question on it, it is not illegal to proceed in the intersection and make the turn after the light goes red to yellow.
Our last rule here is to do with roundabouts. You can check, there's a whole video specifically about all the roundabout rules on my channel. This rule is specifically regarding giving way. One of the most common misconceptions there are, and one of the most common comments I get about roundabouts, is people are under the impression that you have to give way to your right. They think it's the same as coming to a normal T intersection of a roundabout, and the concept of a roundabout is it takes away you having to give way to approaching traffic so that you can enter that roundabout without having to sit there and wait for traffic that's approaching to increase the traffic flow. So as if you have 4 points entering a roundabout, instead of 3 points having to sit there and wait for the dominant traffic flow coming from a certain direction. For example, in this vid you'll see where there's traffic coming from the right constantly to this driver. That driver's going to be sitting there for minutes trying to get a gap to go in. The whole point of putting a roundabout in is to negate that need, to where that driver is fully okay to go into the roundabout as traffic is approaching, and the approaching traffic then has to give way to that car once he's in the roundabout. So this is where people get confused on it, and many people get very angry about this point. They think that a roundabout is the same as any other intersection and you have to give way to your right or to your left. No. Roundabouts have their own set of rules and their own laws, completely separated to all other types of intersections, whether they're T intersections, traffic light intersections. Roundabouts have their own set of rules. That's why we have roundabouts, because they're different to other intersections. So, when you approach a roundabout, you do not have to give way to your right or to your left. You only have to give way to traffic that is already in the roundabout.